Found in Luke chapter number 15. The Bible says there was a young man who was a very exciting person. He was probably one of the party boys of his time. He loved life and he loved to party. He loved to hang out with everybody. He loved beautiful people. He loved to spend time with beautiful people. He liked to be around people who had money. And one day he decided that he had enough time living underneath his father's rule. He walked up to his dad and he said, "Dad, I no longer want to be a part of your home. I no longer want to live underneath your house and live underneath your rules. I wonder if you can give me my part of the inheritance." You see, this man was the younger brother. He walked up to his dad and he said, "I want my inheritance." It was like looking into the face of his father and saying, "I'd rather have your money than have you. I'd rather have your money than have you with me." It was like looking into the face of his father and wishing that his father were dead. And so most people believe that this man had a lot of money, and most of it was probably in land. And so just for his son to receive his inheritance would have meant that his father would have had to sell vast amounts of land that he owned just to turn and then give it to his son. The Bible said that this son went off into the far country. He got so excited. He spent the next few months and years living life, sleeping with prostitutes and partying all day long, living a pathetic life. A life that made him not excited about life, but a life that made him so miserable that once he lost all of his money. And the Bible says that all of his friends were gone. He was starving and he was hungry. His bones were caving in on themselves. His skin was sticking to his chest. And he found a job feeding pigs. One day while he was feeding pigs, he was so hungry that even the food that the pigs were eating looked good to him. Have you ever seen what a pig eats? A pig doesn't eat a lot of corn. A pig eats the leftovers from the meals. The pig eats the leftovers. Everything that you don't eat that's been on your table gets thrown into a bucket and poured into the pig's slop bucket. My grandfather was a farmer and he used to have pigs. They are some of the nastiest, creepiest, dirtiest animals that I've ever seen in my entire life. This man became so hungry that he got down on his knees, he put his head into the bucket where the pigs ate, and he started to eat all of their food along with him. And the Bible says something incredible happened in that moment. The Bible says that all of a sudden this man came to his senses. If you're ever going to come to your senses, you've got to be out of your senses. You can't come to your senses and have everything perfectly. You can't be walking along one day and say, "Aha, life makes sense. The sun is just a little bit brighter." Unless all of a sudden you've come to a moment of clarity in your life and you realize that everything that you've been doing is not the way that God has intended it. The Bible says he came to his senses and he realized, he said, even my father's servants, who he pays money to work in his field, eat better than I do. Even my father's hired maids eat better than I do. And he decides that he's going to go home. He has no money. He has no transportation. Everything that his father had given him years ago was all wasted and spent. And he looks at himself and he says, "I'm not even worthy to live with my father. If maybe my dad would pay me just a little bit of money so that I could be a hired hand and maybe I could live in one of the stables of the property. Maybe I could live with somebody else on the property. If only my father would allow me to come back. I'm not even worthy to live with my dad. If only he would spare my life." And the Bible says that this man decided to go all the way back to his home. He prepares his speech and then he heads for his home. Jordan, would you just come back up and play real softly? I've always imagined this young man on the way back to his home preparing his speech, getting ready for what he's going to say to his father on the day that he finally sees his dad. But I've also imagined the father. I've imagined this dad probably standing on the roof of the home, looking in the distance, waiting on his son. I've imagined this dad who loved his son so very much, looking into the distance, waiting for the day that his son would finally come home. In fact, the Bible says that when his father saw him coming, he saw him at a very great distance. And when he saw him, he started running to him. You have to realize that the dad must have been watching, the father must have been waiting for his son to come home. Because moms and dads who have sons and daughters who've been away from God don't sleep well at night. Moms and dads who have kids that have lived their life away from God don't sleep well at night. They can't pull their covers up to their chin and spend a nice, long, relaxing night of sleep. They toss and they turn. If you've ever walked out on your parents, if you've ever said things to them that have broken their hearts, I guarantee you that they look at you, they love you with everything that they are, but they don't sleep well at night. The Bible says that this man saw his son at a long distance and he started to run to him. This man was a wealthy man. He had more money than most of us in this room put together, but the Bible says that he ran. Having been the patriarch of his family. His clothes would have been all the way to the ground. His clothes would have probably been all the way to the tips of his toes, which meant that if he was going to run to his son, he was going to have to pull his clothes up around his legs. It would have made him look foolish. It would have made him look bizarre. It would have made him look undignified. But he pulled up his clothes up to his hips and he started to run with everything he had to his son. I'm sure this surprised his son. I'm sure that he thought that his dad was going to come and was going to take out a knife and plunge it deep into his chest. You took all of my money, everything that I had, and I gave it to you, and you spent it on prostitutes, and you spent it on partying. You gambled it all away, and now you've come back from the far country, and you expect that I'm just going to come to meet you with arms open wide. I'm sure that's what the son thought. But see, there was something about a father who was deeply in love with a son that didn't matter what conventional wisdom would say. This young man saw his father coming at a distance, and he ran, and he wrapped his arms around him. You remember the speech? You remember that this young man had prepared a speech. But Dad, I'm not worthy to live in your house. I'm not worthy to even be called your son. And right in mid-sentence, his father says, stop. And then he says, quick! And he yells to one of the other servants and he says, quick! Bring my son a ring and put it on his finger. Bring him the best robe that we have in the house and put it on his shoulders. Take out the fatted calf. We're going to have a party tonight. We're going to have a celebration because my son who was gone, my son who was lost has been found. See, to have the nicest robe in the house would have meant that the father was taking his own clothes and putting around his son's shoulders. This son had abused him, had neglected him, had rejected him, had walked out on him. He probably had the filth underneath his fingernails. He probably had sandals that barely stayed on his feet. He probably had spit in the corner of his mouth, but a father said, put a ring on his finger, take my robe and put it over his shoulder, get the best meal that we have. Tonight's a party because my son has come home. That night they were all gathered together in the celebrating hall. The music was loud and everyone was excited until the older brother came home. The older brother came home and he stopped at the entrance and he said, why all the songs? Why all the music? One of the servants said, your brother, he's come home. He's been gone so long, but he's home. And instead of being excited that his younger brother had finally come home, the Bible says that his older brother was mad. And he refused to even go inside the party. And so finally the father had to come out and stand in front of his son and said, son, why won't you come in and celebrate? Your brother that was lost has been found. Why won't you come into the party and eat and drink and have a great night because your brother has finally come home? And this young man, this older brother, looked at his dad and said, I've never disobeyed you. I've always listened to you. I've never asked for any of your money. I've always given you my best, and you've never given me anything. You've never even given me a goat that I can go out and celebrate with my friends. I'm all here by myself. And when your son, who's gambled away everything that you have, comes back, you throw the biggest party that you can. Why won't you do any of that for me? And his dad looked at him and said, you have everything that I have. Everything that I have is yours. Now let's go and then celebrate your brother. I want you to understand something simply tonight. That every single one of us in this room is either one of three people. Every single one of us in this room is either the younger brother, the older brother, or the understanding.